I'm Sal Abenanti, and I'm here on Kickstarter to ask for your support to produce my 115-page color graphic novel, The Hostage. Hostage is set in the streets of Rio de Janeiro, based on the plight of the street children that live in the favelas. In the world of the graphic novel, being murdered daily, and the hostage is the evil spirit that is raised to avenge their death. Origins go all the way back to the indigenous tribes of the Amazon as the spirits that protect children, especially murder children. The level of death that these kids have to endure every day. They have nowhere to sleep. They have no place to eat. They have to survive off of begging. There were nobody in capes that were coming to save these kids.
The Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I haven't put this billboard up enough, so I wanted to let you know the topics that we're discussing today. Superman and Lois debuted on Tuesday night on the CW, but we're also talking about Superman comics of late, the great issues of Future State, and what is coming up on Superman and Action Comics as Infinite Frontier, the new status quo for DC, kicks off in March, and later that month, you'll get the first couple chapters of New Frontier, and they are from our guest today, and I got to pop him in. I didn't realize I didn't pop him in. There he is. It's Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Good to see you, Phil.
Good to see you, John. How's everything?
Everything's good, man. It's great to see you. We were already getting questions, which is great.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And I wanted to start before we got into, well, you know, something. I will start with a couple questions here. First of all, because Corinne asked this question right off the bat, and it's good to preview what you got coming up. Do you plan to explore Superman's relationship with the military extensively in your run?
Thanks for that question. Not really, honestly. The stories that we have coming up, I think we've seen a lot of Superman with his usual cast of characters and the Daily Planet behind the scenes stuff, which is all super interesting, and it's great to see those characters fleshed out and identified so clearly. But we are kind of going another direction now, where there's going to be a lot of off-world stuff. So there's not going to be a lot of Earth military stuff happening. There's going to be a lot of combat. I'll say that, but
cool.
But not in the way that Corinne is asking, I think.
All right, fair enough, man. Well, we're going to get into your chapters of Future State, which have been fantastic. I really enjoyed them.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to write them. It really turned out great. The artists all crushed it.
100%, man. And it really was great to see this speculative future of where the L family is going and all the different iterations. But I did want to start with Superman and Lois. It aired 2 nights ago. And, man, I got to tell you, I thought it was a great 90-minute pilot. I really, really enjoyed it.
Me too. Honestly, I thought it was great. I mean, the show makes a lot of changes to the traditional Superman mythos,
Sure.
But honestly, I applaud them for that. I think, DC has really hung its hat on the concept of a multiverse, including on their TV shows.
And the films, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And the idea that there are, infinite worlds out there, infinite versions of the characters that we love. You don't have to. There's not like a capital T true version of those characters. Even though sometimes we'd like that, it's nice to know that there are infinite versions and you kind of have the one you want. I mean, I'd much prefer the show's creators do what's best in service of the story that they're setting out to tell, than slavishly adhere to a version that
we've seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we need surprises. I completely agree, man, and that's why everything they've presented, I like it. I like Superman as a father. I like his own frustrations. I love that. I like the way they set up the two sons, Jordan and Jonathan. I think it's going to be a tough act in terms of Jordan's own personal conflicts and inability and feeling like an outsider and stuff. It's great and it's smart that they made him the one that had the powers, as opposed to Jonathan, who obviously it seemed to be that maybe he would be the one that inherited the powers.
Yeah. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool head fake and made it much more interesting. Because I mean, Jonathan, of course, is what you would expect, and it was cool to see it go the other way. By the way, we should probably say we're going to spoil the shit out of the show. So if anyone has not seen the show, please tone out.
Boy, you're doing this better than I am, man. You're 100% right about that. And I promise you, people are asking questions about your run. I promise we will get to them. I did want to just get the TV show out of the way.
Yeah,
and again,
totally.
And I apologize if we apologize.
You ask those questions, even if they're tough questions. I'd love to have them. I've seen a lot of people saying interesting things online. I'd love to talk more about the run and about what they can expect.
100%, man. No, definitely, most definitely. But like you said, it's an interesting opportunity, and I mean, I've liked this about all the CW shows in general, that we are getting new ideas and different interpretations of characters. Because how boring would it be if it was just classic Superman that we've seen for 80 years? I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to see different wrinkles. And I like Tyler Hockman. I think he's a great Superman. I like Lois. I think she's fantastic. I like what's happening to the kids. And like I said, like I started to say, I'm a little nervous about Jordan just because I think of the way they did Wally West on The Flash. And while I understood, and it was funny, I really kind of got schooled by a couple other podcasters who were much more in tune with what they were trying to do with the character, and they presented it to me in a different way. But I'm like, he's too angry. He's too angry. Wally, in the case of Wally. And they kind of gave me his point of view, their point of view of he was abandoned by the family, all this stuff. He's, doesn't know his father, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. And I can see what's motivating Jordan's frustrations. By the same token, it's like you gotta want, we still want to like him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I totally with you. Like when he walked into the room and he's beating on Superman and like the old Mortal Kombat game, which I own, and yeah, I mean, I was like, okay, it's maybe a little heavy-handed, and I was afraid that it might turn into this I don't know. I didn't know how it was going to go.
Sure.
But now having seen the whole pilot, honestly, I think that was a lot of that is going to be set up. Not to say that Jordan is all totally cool now and fine, but I don't think it's going to be like it was. At the end, they were more connected with their dad than they had been earlier, or certainly Jordan was. And that was nice to see because I don't know how much I would want to see Jordan just being shitty constantly, and how I don't know. He's having problems that Superman doesn't entirely understand and doesn't know how to help him with, So I think that's going to continue, but not quite as angsty as it might have been, I guess, which is good for me.
I understand. All right. I appreciate this, Gar, telling us that I'm saying Hoechlin, it's more Hoechlin.
Oh, Hoechlin, yeah.
So Tyler Hoechlin, good to hear that. And he said, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of Jonathan, the good son, bad son dynamic they're going for. I get it, man.
I'm hopeful that, the fact that they took a current continuity that has one son and made it into two, I think it makes total sense for reasons of TV drama. Like the story that they're telling is clearly one about family, more than anything else. And that's why, they're just like bending time and space to make things line up to tell exactly the story that they want, which is fine. Daily Planet is apparently going to be more or less off the board. They're in Smallville now, which is a huge change. there's two children instead of one. I mean, big changes, but it makes for a really interesting family dynamic, especially if we're going to be exploring the, one kid with powers, one without thing for a while. Although just from a drama perspective, I suspect they're going to play that at some point. If the show goes a long time, I feel like we're going to see both sons with powers of some sort, in my opinion. But that's not a spoiler, as I don't know that to be true.
No, I hear you, man, and that I'm sure that thought kind of crossed a lot of fans' minds. I remember a great Silver Age story, and it hit me at the right time. I was 10 years old. It was an imaginary story drawn by Kurt Swan at his most children's book beautiful art, and it was about Superman having two sons, and one was a human son and one was Kryptonian, and they were Kal-El and Jor-El. And Jor-El was the non-powered one. And he even in a great, I wish I could remember if it was Alvin Schwartz or which 60s writer wrote the story. But the non-superpowered one managed to travel back in time using something from the Fortress and met Jor-El and really connected with him on a science level. And it was this great story about how initially the non-powered one felt inferior and then by the end found some value and ended up saving Superman and Kal-El Jr. And it was great. At the end of the story, you saw the kids playing where Kal was flying and Jor was running alongside of him and stuff. And again, I mean, I was like 10, I think, when I first read it. Really hit me perfectly, and it's really still in my brain. So obviously one of my favorite Silver Age stories. So I am kind of fun. I think it's cool, and I wonder if hopefully I'll have a chance to talk to Jeff Johns or Mark as well. Damn it. I know. Why am I blanking on Mark? Mark, fantastic. Arrowverse. Guggenheim. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
And who's had his time writing Superman. I enjoyed Mark's run on Superman about 15 years ago or whatever. I thought it was and also on Batman Superman for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I've gone on the record pretty often and loudly that most people always ask me, like, who's your Superman? Like, what's your take and all that? And I'm a huge fan of the Christopher Reeve Superman, and I've said that over and over.
Sure.
But in the context of like different kinds of stories, because I mean, those movies there's such a specific flavor to them, and the context that he is in the comics now is so different and so much bigger potentially. But as far as who Superman is, I still see Christopher Reeve in my mind. As far as his
personality,
just that smile that tells you like everything's going to be okay, and like I'm completely without ego. I just want to save everyone. He just had inherent goodness in him, and not just goodness, but his confidence, his strength, his wisdom, his love for all of us. And I think Tyler Hoechlin's Superman is very different, and he still has that same goodness and compassion, and that is the most important part for sure.
Absolutely,
in my opinion. And I love that part of him. That probably my favorite scene of the whole damn show was that thing at the beginning where he saves the kid. He's got, there's the green car.
Yes.
Like, just like that old cover. And he gives the kid his hat back and like, my mom made it for me. I don't know. It's just such a great scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he nails that part of it. But I think it's also very clear that the show's not going to give us a Superman who has it all figured out necessarily, like the Christopher Reeve one did.
Sure.
He didn't have the same confidence. He doesn't always know what to do. He's got doubts. He makes mistakes. Go ahead. Excuse me. Even when he's doing the physical stuff, like when he's freezing the river and lifting the thing. Even physically, you see him like kind of sweat and grit his teeth, like trying not to screw it up. He's more fallible, I guess, than the Superman I see in my mind.
But that's great, and especially on the Clark side.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
he's still a guy dealing with being a father, and I mean, I'm Uncle Buck, as I always like to point out, being old, single, and happy. But I certainly see it from my family and my friends. It is tough raising kids. It's tough raising teenagers, sure. And the Superman shouldn't have all the answers and stuff. I'm sure there's no crystal of Marlon Brando, explaining, my son. Let me explain adolescence to you. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Good luck on that, man. Absolutely. And that's great. And also, I like the team, the husband-wife team dynamic of Lois. Lois, yeah. I mean, really, thank God for Greg Rucka and the other great creators that aren't immediately coming to mind. Well, certainly Brian Bendis did a great job writing Lois. But that's the
Oh
thing.
my God,
Lois
totally.
Lois is the strongest non-powered hero in the DC universe.
Totally.
And deserves that level and even deserves to be, part of the title because she's important.
Yeah, man. I think Bendis's love for Lois came through so clearly in his run. Like Lois became such a powerhouse of a character under Bendis. Not that she wasn't before, but yeah, I mean, from where I was reading Lois as a kid to now, she's changed so much, and it's just so like, yeah, just so confident and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and like she gives him permission to be Superman at that one crucial moment where he's like, I can't leave. I got to be here for my kids. It's like, we're fine. Go. And it's like, yeah, every now and then he needs that. This is what the role is for the best side characters in every book is the voice from the Greek chorus being like, hey, you're not thinking, let's get you outside of the big picture. Everything's fine. Or you're fucking up. I mean, I was just talking to, I forget who I was just talking to about Daredevil and Foggy. And Foggy Nelson is that guy that knows Matt Murdock and certainly now could go, Matt, you're blowing it.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention, man. You really, and we need, the heroes need that, I think, for good conflict, good characterization, and good story.
Yeah, that's certainly her and one of her roles for Superman. Like she's this writer that he admires as a writer himself. She's this voice that he trusts and respects as much as anyone. And that's so important. And you see that in the show for sure. He's got he does make mistakes and like more than I would prefer, I guess.
Okay.
But stuff like he's got these kids that he worries about, of course, and in order to protect them, he's lied to them their entire life, which I think was a big mistake. And we see that in the pilot. We see that he's made a mistake. It's something that my version of like my headcanon, Superman would never have done what he did. I mean, as far as having his identity out there, like to me, like just the truth of it, just the honesty of where he's at now, it was a little hard to go back. It's hard to go back to a place where he's lying to everyone, including his own sons. It seemed crazy to me. And even just from a pragmatic perspective, just kind of a mistake. He has a son who's hurting in a way he doesn't entirely get, that he never experienced himself and doesn't really know.
I see. That's interesting. I disagree, but go ahead and I'll tell you.
No, how so?
Well, because Clark growing up was an outsider and didn't feel comfortable in himself. And he hasn't been able to explain that to his son other than giving his own Clark Kent stories. And like I loved when I can't remember if it was Jonathan or Jordan, when it's like, when I was in high school, yeah, Dad, we know they duct taped you to the track.
Oh yeah. Jordan's like, yeah, cool. That was in Smallville. We're in New York.
Right. And so I do think there is room for them to obviously explore that, and for him to connect it with Jordan, but like, hey, I know what it's like to hide these powers. I know what it's like to have to try to be normal and balance all that in a crazy life. I also kind of like how Jordan is like, hey, maybe I'm on meds because you've been lying to me all this time. And it's like, that's a fair exclamation that, again, with discussion, it'll be interesting to see how it works out. But
I'm curious about that too. Like when I said he didn't understand, what I meant was like the anxiety disorder they talk about, like the fact that he's on meds and all that. But at the end, it comes up like maybe he didn't need it after all. Maybe he is going through something more similar to what Clark did, and the fact that he's been, he thought he was kind of getting gaslighted his whole life. Maybe that's part of the rejection of what's in front of him.
Yeah, no, and that's why it's like, okay, that's interesting. I love the way they're portraying Smallville as kind of a red state, and that is Kansas, and it's got kind of agricultural problems as far as a town, and I like Lana's husband. I think I like the idea of this is a guy who's kind of like he said, hey, we stayed behind to try to make Smallville great. You guys all can talk a great story about how Morgan Edge is coming in and screwing things up. This guy sees the future. You guys all have is the past as far as where it goes.
Yeah,
and also, he seems like a decent guy, and at least on some level of respect. Certainly after the fire exploded and stuff.
Exactly. Like earlier on, I was like, okay, this guy's a serious asshole. But then later on, you see him doing his job and doing something. You see that you need this guy, and he's also a valuable member of this community, and he has his perspective, and I'm really interested to see how they play the rural versus urban thing. Yeah, you're right. The red state, blue state thing. Like it's just such an important time right now to have stories like that if they're played super well. I really did like, you can't pick a side in a story like that and really show both sides. It can't be like, oh, these guys really are just, you know, elitist douchebags from the city. And you can't play it the other way either, where it's like, well, actually, no, the country people are just wrong.
Right.
You know, like they both have perspectives and they're both kind of annoyed for different reasons and
right for different reasons as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. No, the conversation between Lois and I think it was Kyle. I believe Kyle is Lana's husband's name.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And it's Lana. It almost should have. I mean, you hate to say it, but it's like Lana's husband. He's Mr. Lang. He's not Mr. Lang. He's Mr. Whatever,
Right.
whatever the hell her married name is.
Right.
I love Emmanuel. I don't even know how to say her name. I used to love most of the things I've ever seen her in.
The Lana Lang actress?
Yes.
She looked really familiar. I couldn't tell what she was in. What has she done?
Well, I'm embarrassed to admit, I liked Entourage. I know it's a ridiculous.
Oh, okay.
I know it was a very misogynistic show. For me, it was the male Sex in the City. You'll forgive me, everybody, if you disagree. We'll agree to disagree. It's like, of course it was indulgent. It was young boy's fantasy life. I mean, Anyway, that said, she was one of the main guy's girlfriends and one of the constant female actors on the show. But that said, no, I think she was great. I like the way they portrayed her. I love hearing, again, the Kent parents, Jonathan and Martha, are once again the way they should be, where I disagree with Zack Snyder in terms of, no, Kents help people. That's what
completely.
That's how Clark learned how to be the man part of Superman.
Yeah, in my opinion, and I know there's some people, I'm sure there's somebody in this chat room that loves Man of Steel, and there's things about it that I love too. I mean,
cool.
Visually, I love the whole thing looks amazing.
Yep.
Love the music, love the actors. The Kent thing was a big deal. That to me is a bridge too far, because I mean, it's just at the core of who Superman is. Again, I'm talking about my own headcanon.
I'm with you.
But his powers come from his Kryptonian parents, and his heart and soul come from his Earth parents. They gave him the compassion and humility that make him truly exceptional.
100%.
And if you turn that whole thing around and make Jor-El like this paragon of virtue in every way, and like, well, you're going to be you're my true son. To kind of make Jor-El his only real parent that matters, and the Kents are just trying to keep a lid on it the whole time. Like, no, you got to hide. You can't help people. It's better to let people die than to help them. Like, that's crazy. You can't have Jonathan Kent be that voice in his head. So yeah, that was the big misstep in my opinion. And if that one thing had been corrected, it would have gone such a long way.
Well, and even Martha in Batman versus Superman, when she says, hey, you don't owe them anything.
I was just going to say, you don't owe this world anything.
And it's like, man, you don't get them. And that's,
yeah.
Or at least we're on the same page as far as that goes. No, and there was that great moment in Smallville and it was the Christopher Reeve episode when they finally translate the Kryptonian and or Kryptonese, whatever. And they, it says you will lead them, you will like lord over them. I forget what the words were. And he's freaking out. And he's like, am I supposed to be a conqueror? What the hell? I don't know. And Jonathan Kent, John Schneider, way to go, John, grabs him and he's like, hey, you're my son. I don't care what this guy's saying. This isn't what your destiny is. Listen to me. And it was like, that is beautiful. That is exactly a John Kent, Clark Kent moment. That
completely. His example of how to be a father comes entirely from Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent.
Yeah.
And he even in the comics, in fact, with what happened with Jor-El and Jonathan aging up and all that, just the name, even just seeing the name Jor-El in Jordan's name, rankles me a little. I'm like,
Jor-El, I like it.
Jor-El messed up so bad. It just solidified the Kents even more as Superman's true parents.
That's
the
interesting.
ones who really did it right by him.
That's interesting. I mean, I liked it. And I hear what you're saying. Well, and again, I don't think they're going completely with the old Smallville continuity. It'll be interesting to see if there are moments of Superman going to the fortress or whatever and channeling Jor-El's spirit, and or in a flashback or something like that. Because that's the only other missed opportunity. I was almost looking forward to the idea that Martha was still alive. I like that about the Bryan Singer movie, Superman Returns.
Right.
I like, I mean, again, having lived for years with both the parents dying young, the parents dying old, the parents dying, or living. I like
now they're both around again. Yeah.
I do like that he has this family circle to go back to, and especially when he's single, and be like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. And, the only place that makes sense to me in this world is back home with my parents, or once the relationship with Lois is finally cemented, that I can talk to Lois. Right. So I get, it was a nice moment in the pilot to lose Martha, but I hope that there are future flashback scenes where we can get more of the Kents.
Yeah, I hope that we will. I admit I have not done any deep dives, like looked into IMDb or anything to see if there's going to be more of the Kents, if there's going to be more of the Daily Planet staff, because we still haven't really meaningfully seen Perry. We haven't seen Jimmy or like any one of those characters. If there's, I
don't think Perry's there. It sounded like when Morgan took over the paper.
Yeah, no, I was thinking when the guy was showing him through the bullpen initially, I thought that might be Perry, but never really says.
Yeah, me too. I found that very interesting, and it's funny because someone else had said that they weren't sure if the planet is off the table or not. Lois could technically probably just be based in Smallville.
Well, yeah, I think she's. It's hard to imagine Lois as not a journalist, and
or do what was going on during Tomasi and Jurgen's run, and damn it, the artist too, Pat Gleason.
Right.
What they set up before Brian took over, and the idea that especially Crisis on Infinite Earth, Superman and Lois, that they were living on the farm, they were living in secret. Lois was writing a book, and doing investigative journalism under an assumed name or however she was operating. So yeah, I mean that's again, I look forward to it. I really look forward to how they develop her characterization. Someone had asked earlier, and I want to see if I can find it, about what we thought about the villain twist at the end with a new Luthor.
Oh yeah. Well, that's another example of a huge shift from continuity. And I do wonder, because, I mean, he was talking about, like, I'm from another world like you, and I can, I know Kryptonese, and, like, I know all about you, Kal-El, I know your real name, and no one else seems to. Like, are they going to make Luthor that actual thing, or is he just, surely he's not completely bullshitting. He kind of can't be.
I think, and I saw other people comment this way, I'm assuming he's a parallel universe Luthor, given that we've already seen in the Arrowverse the existence of these other things. What confused, because initially when I heard him say Captain Luthor, it's like, so is this continuity on the same planet as Supergirl, or is it another parallel world? And given that we don't know yet, I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I mean, in only seeing the back of his head, he seemed to be a black gentleman. So
yeah,
I'm assuming
somebody, before I actually saw the episode, somebody posted a picture of a black man that seemed to be that same dude, but it didn't actually, like, the thing I saw did not say specifically this is Luthor, but it seemed clear that's what they were talking about, and but they never showed his face in the show. So I don't know if that's like some behind the scenes thing that I'm not privy to, or, whatever.
Yeah. And again, people are like, he's clearly from another world. Possibly, Dan, we know. I
don't think that is clear. I think there's a huge chance. I mean, yeah, that would make sense given everything that we've seen. We've seen versions of Lex from other worlds and other stuff, of course, including like the Injustice games more recently. And there's all these possibilities of who he could be, where he could be from.
And Dirty Harrington says, do we feel like this is hung up on being an Arrowverse show, or if this works outside of that? I almost hope, like Phillip was saying at the beginning of the show, that it is a different world that is not bound by the Arrowverse rules and has more opportunity for story.
Yeah. The fact that they didn't even name drop Supergirl at all, I feel like they're kind of not that they don't coexist, but I feel like it's kind of, they're trying to make it its own thing.
100%. Well, and that's, it's funny because again, I was having another conversation. A buddy of mine didn't know that this was premiering this week, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I go, if it's not on, on demand on whatever system you use, I'm like, they're rerunning it on Saturday night. And I said, it's interesting because I remember a lot of friends while Supergirl was running on its own, and once they introduced Tyler as Superman, they're like, well, that's stupid. Supergirl solves the problem. Superman should solve the problem. I'm like, the show is called Supergirl. That's all you need. I mean, you know what I mean? Because seriously,
Totally.
And my other example for that was like, well, Green Arrow could never beat Solomon Grundy. The name of the comic book is Green Arrow.
Right.
Who's going to win? I think it's the guy on the title. Just
right.
me, I don't know. But I mean, that's the thing. And honestly, I kind of like in the Arrowverse that Superman and Supergirl are almost equal in power. We've seen scenes where Superman's getting his ass kicked and Supergirl is able to save the day. I think that's great. And I kind of like the idea that they're almost, again, equal powered. But I loved, and this is why, and Guggenheim and Berlanti and the whole crew, before they even cast Tyler as Superman, one of the earliest episodes of Supergirl was this great conversation between Clark and Carol or Kara, excuse me, and they're just texting each other, and it was just everything about Clark was in this text, and it's, you're doing great, don't lose confidence, everything's fine, and I'm like, my God, they're writing a Superman character off camera that's 100 times better than these Snyder films. I'm like, this is Superman. These people, and that's why Greg and Mark and Jeff Johns, these are the right people. I can't wait to talk to, hopefully, Mark and Jeff about this more because, I know they get the character, and it doesn't surprise me. And again, Berlanti clearly gets this universe. Dude, for years, and again, this is just my opinion, and I mean no disrespect for the Matt Reeves or Snyder or anybody else, or Patty Jenkins, but it just seems like the CW TV people really understand the heart of these characters, can put a different spin on them, and are so much more successful in what they're presenting. And I believe that had they been, or should they ever become in charge of films, the way Feige is in charge of everything now with Marvel, I think that's a missed opportunity to not let them do some films, because I think they would connect with a broad audience the way they interpret these characters.
Yeah, maybe so. I'd be curious to see what comes next.
Absolutely, man. And
I think that the alternate Earth thing is probably the most likely thing for Lex. The more I'm thinking about it, I'm seeing some. Sorry to sidetrack. I've been seeing some comments about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, him being from we've seen that happen elsewhere to great success, and I think him coming from a world that was destroyed and potentially blaming Superman for it here, like trying to undo that version of events by unwittingly becoming the villain to this Superman would make a lot of sense. And I'm very curious to see how that all plays out. But honestly, it's all going to be about the family. Like, I mean, nerds like me want to see the Superman stuff, but it's really going to be, especially given the fact that it's a CW show, which is kind of known for its angsty, beautiful people. It's going to be more about, the youth dynamic and seeing how the kids grow up, and see how, those dynamics are super important in the show, more so than even the Luthor thing. I feel like it's going to be kind of like the underlying subplot that kind of drives the season along, while we really see the brothers go through some stuff.
Absolutely. But I do, it's interesting. When Smallville was running, Jeff Loeb told me how it was presented in Japan. And I don't know if you know about this.
I don't.
Okay. Hero was an hour-long show. In Japan, they chopped it down to just being a half-hour show.
Whoa!
And I assume that, and I'd have to go back and listen to conversations or have Jeff back, and he can definitely spell it out for me. But I believe they cut out a lot of the interpersonal Clark, Lana, all that stuff, and it pretty much was an action show about the problem of the week, and that's how they chopped it down. And I think, in this show, because I really feel like my one problem with the CW shows, two things. One, I understand because they're an over-the-air network. They're kind of committed to around 20 episodes a season in a non-COVID situation. I don't know if this first season, especially given that it's starting in March, is only going to be 13 episodes. I have no idea, because I noticed Flash is starting next week. God, I don't know. I haven't been paying close enough attention, but I do think there's room for all three components: teenagers, what they're going through, Clark or Lois on a personal level, and heroic problem of the week. I do think there's enough room for all three of those to fill, because I really felt in the 20 episode world, we got a lot of fat in our seasons, especially once they identify the villain of the season, and it's episode 17 or 18 of a 22 episode season, and it's like, okay, here's a whole episode that has nothing to do with whatever, and it's like, can we just get to the big fight, please? Can you fight? Can Barry fight Zoom? Do I really need? How many times are we going to go back in time and have another conversation with Barry's dead mother? Enough. I mean, seriously, I'd get frustrated with it. I won't deny it.
No, I get it. There were aspects of the relationship stuff on Arrow that kind of eventually got a little one note for me as well, and I really wanted to see more of the lore.
I totally agree, absolutely, and again, a million great things about these shows, and God damn, man, for this shit to go 8 or 9 years in this Arrowverse, holy shit. That's an accomplishment. This is, totally. I mean, that's why, as an old fart, this is really exciting. Even though it's a lot of teen angst, it's like we're kicking Star Trek's ass. We're kicking so many television shows' asses, and certainly with the spinoffs. Don't get me started, kids. I know, but my point is, I'm saying the past spinoffs that it went more than 8 years. But for there to be a successful superhero franchise to run for 8 or 9 years, holy shit!
Oh my god! The fact that we have a Flash TV show where they're talking openly about like the Speed Force, and having a crisis of infinite Earths event on TV that people watched and loved.
That's the last time I saw Guggenheim. We were both at Terrificon in Connecticut, and it was a really long limo ride from the show ending Sunday to the airport. And he was beside himself excited, where he's like, the network heads finally understand what we've been trying to do with these crossovers. And next year we're doing Crisis, and we're finally getting to do exactly what we wanted to do.
It's so crazy, man.
That fans have been begging for. I mean, but that's what happens, Phil. That's what, honestly, I even, again, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, I usually do, punching Star Trek, but it's like, we as fans are like, we like Captain Pike. We want a Captain Pike show. The same thing with Tyler. Hey, Tyler is an amazing Superman. Can you give us a Superman series, please? And maybe it was standing film deals that prevented them from transferring it to TV, and maybe that took forever. Who knows? I have no idea. I don't know the behind-the-scenes stuff. But it's like we've been screaming for this Superman Lois show, or at least a Superman show. And again, based on the first episode, they're always good with pilot episodes. I loved this Supergirl pilot. I thought it was amazing. So I'm very excited. And I'm glad that, again, we're getting what we want. We're getting what we asked for. Yeah.
I just keep thinking back to the days of I mean, what was it even like? I mean, like the Captain America movie with the weird see-through shield, and like the old one,
Yeah, I know.
And like when Generation X, when there's a Generation X TV show, we thought we were so spoiled, And now
Nick Fury, the Hasselhoff.
Oh my God, the Hasselhoff Nick Fury,
which I will defend. It's a goofy looking movie, but for a TV movie, David Goyer wrote it, and they got everything in it. My God, they got Lisa Rinna being the Countess, the Contessa. And Hasselhoff was over the top, but it was fun, and Von Stucker's in there. I don't know, man. I liked it. I'll admit it. And again, especially in the 90s, now I'm like Dana Carvey's old character on SNL when he's the old man. We had it. We loved it. We loved it. It was crap, but we loved it. And it's true. Good Lord, we were all excited when the superhero roast happened. Did you watch that at all when it was on DC Universe? They were streaming it on DC Universe. I watched it when it was originally on. And I mean, I knew it was goofy then. Man, it is hard to watch now. As Art Balthazar would say, break out the hammers and start pounding your feet in anger, because it's like that's the only way you're going to be able to watch that and take your mind off of the shit that you're watching right now. Is worrying about your feet. So it made sense to Art. I don't know.
It's a golden age for sure. So I'm going to try to make the most of it. So I'm looking forward to in conclusion, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of that show. I think it's going to be good. I think they're going to do a nice job with it.
I agree. As RP is saying here, it's like Jeff said, we're all looking for more Superman stories, always wanting more of the Man of Steel himself. It just takes the right people in the right pitch. 100%, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
it's a different Superman than I expected.
Really? Okay.
Well, just the fact that, I mean, I'm always saying I think Superman should be, super aspirational. He should be the absolute best of us. And that doesn't mean that we should never see him struggle.
Yeah, so where would you see conflict? Because, yeah, you did say this earlier that, he would be more sure of himself, and this one has a few more doubts that he's kind of dealing with. Where would you see any sort of mental, if not flaws, just, obstacles for Superman over?
I mean, I'd have to really figure out how to write the show. If I was going to be like, well, here's how I'm not going to disrespect the writers by saying here's what they should have done.
No, but I'm saying in terms of as you portray Superman, what personal? I mean, again, nothing's invalid, but yeah.
I just want a Superman that inspires us at every turn. Not to say that things can't ever get difficult. I really like the dynamic between the brothers. I like that things are not easy for him at home, but how he reacts should inspire us at every turn, in my opinion. And we're not getting that Christopher Reeve aspirational always Superman. We're getting a more relatable version of that. We're getting a very decent man, a loving father who's got a lot on his plate and is trying his damnedest not to let anyone down, and I think that's a perfectly valid choice. I think Tyler plays it great. I think he's doing a really good job. I think it's going to make for really great TV. So I am in full support.
No, I think on balance, and again, great pilot. I think there's a lot of potential here. I like the actors. I know the writers. I have full faith in and the producers. I know what they're doing as far as just in general, how they've handled things so far. And I'm genuinely excited. And that's great. And again, contrasting how I feel about new Star Trek, it's like, oh man, I can't wait to talk about this show. So I have a feeling if we're not doing official reviews each week here on Word Balloon, I imagine it will figure into the conversation with any guests that have any connections to Superman. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to future ones. But here, let's see. There's some more comments. Let me see. The pilot was good. I feel there wasn't enough Lois. Okay. I mean, again, I think it's early, Gar, and I would they had to shove in a lot and set up a lot. So I would count on, again, that's why I think a 22 episode season, there's enough characters to really focus on these people, and I think it'll be good that way.
There's a nice comment there about Mark Miller said that when you come out of a Superman film, you should feel like $1 million. Yeah, man. I agree. I wouldn't, watching the show again, I think Tyler Hoechlin is doing great, and I really like this take on Superman. But yeah, I see him making mistakes. I'm like, you should have told your sons,
sure.
In the version that I see I don't get those moments. Like I want to see somebody who's better than me all the time. So that's the difference, but it's still a perfectly valid take, and it's going to make for really good TV. Honestly, maybe better TV than the version in which he has it all figured out all the time.
We'll see. Absolutely, man. I feel like Superman has the awesomeness down, or Snyder has the awesomeness down, but he's so cold. CW is a tiny bit too normal for me, but if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go for CW. RB, I hear what you're saying.
Nice. Shout out to RB. She's a friend.
Oh, very nice.
And
I would love to see a J. Michael Straczynski-esque grounded arc with the Kent family on a road trip. That's interesting, Bernie. And I really respect the hell out of Straczynski as a writer. The grounded story arc is one of my literally least favorite attempts at a big Superman event where I'm like, I liked it better when it was Hard Traveling Heroes and it was Hal Jordan and Ollie going across the country.
Yeah, I've got that, and I've got that on the wall.
It's a classic, and it just and I'm sure. And again, forgive me, everybody, because I really do respect Straczynski as a writer. Obviously, this was a story Straczynski wanted to tell, and clearly, writing his autobiography and calling it "Becoming Superman" and how much the character means to him, I don't doubt his love of the character. But it just seemed like it was so derivative of Hard Traveling Heroes, and also look, I get it, but Superman walking across the country, it's like, come on. He's Superman.
Yeah.
He flies. He flies. I mean, and even but he's on the ground enough to still be able to relate to people. And the other thing, when you said earlier about how in the comics, obviously now they've abandoned for now, who knows how long, the Clark Kent identity. That's gonna be tough for the comics to compete with. It'll be an interesting choice moving forward because just like the movies, sometimes when millions of people watch, like for instance, my favorite other example of that is they do the Hal Jordan Green Lantern movie, and millions of kids that grew up with the Justice League cartoon are like, "Where's Jon Stewart? And who is this guy?" So I mean, and from that, by that same token, it's like Clark Kent. I like the idea of Clark Kent, and we've talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it gives Superman the opportunity to have a normal conversation without the other person feeling like, "Holy shit, I'm talking to Superman."
Right.
I better be on my best behavior. I better be the best person I could be. Whereas you could be with Clark and be like, Clark, I hate my wife. And I don't know why I do, but I hate like that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's definitely going to be a different vibe. And it's just a whole different dynamic to get used to. But deep down, I still feel like it fits in better with his mission statement, like truth and justice, to tell the world. I like the execution when they did it. Like when Bendis wrote it like that, it made sense to me. I thought it was very effectively done. And it's hard to come back from now, like having seen it. And
that's interesting. I don't know.
He still identifies as Clark Kent. Like somebody asked me recently, I can't remember who it was. Somebody online asked me, "Who do you like? What does Clark Kent? What does Superman say his name is?" And my just knee-jerk reaction was, "He's Clark Kent." Like that's the name that's what he was called his whole life growing up. That's who he's always been. And that's what his parents called him. That's what his friends have always called him. He's always been that. And it's not like he's not going to answer to Cal. Like there was a time when I was much younger where I went by a different first name than Phillip. And if somebody were to call him, was like, "Hey," and use the old name again, I wouldn't not answer. But that's not the name I think of as myself, and Superman, and also I don't see him telling someone I'm Superman.
No,
because the word just inherently means superiority, and that's not how he sees himself.
Sure. No. And I completely agree. And I do think if he were to approach somebody even in costume and they were like, it's like, "Call me Clark." Everything's fine.
And now he can say, "My name is Clark." And he does that in the comic. I've turned in a script in which he does that. I'm like, "My name's Clark and nothing's going to happen to you."
That's awesome. That's
and to me, it just feels so great to be able to say that, like he just knows what his name is and he tells people that, and he doesn't have to call himself Superman, which just feels like he's saying, "I am inherently more than you are," which he has never believed. That's what makes him so exceptional, because he is, but doesn't see that in himself. So that being able to give his true name, which is Clark Kent, is a very important thing to me.
I hear you, man. Let's transition and talk about your books lately. And I see some good questions regarding your books. And Nerdette wanted to know, do you see a future for the Harsevel type book? I loved it. Yeah, let's get into what you did.
Hi, Nerdette. She's asked a ton of questions while we're addressing her stuff. I would love to do more. I mean, to do that book, that was a premise that they came to me about, like, "Hey, we want to do a book about Superman's descendants, like way in the future." I'm like, "Oh my God, I would love that." Because I mean, as you know, I just love to world build. And I made up literally 1,000 years of genealogy for Superman to make this work. I didn't want to be like, "Well, now we've got these random people and we don't know who their parents are." I have a whole family tree, and people have asked to see it.
Absolutely, man.
I can't actually reveal it because there's a bunch of spoilers in there.
Well, yeah, down the road when everything's out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And this is assuming that I'm going to be writing Superman for the rest of my life, which I know is not true. So I can't just assume like, well, here are the children that Clark Kent and Lois have, and then so-and-so dies and so-and-so has their own children and blah, blah, blah. Here's the future, because other writers are going to come along later on and blow all that up.
No, I hope not. And I would hope that your run is successful enough to merit an absolute edition or some sort of collected edition, and it would be great after the fact to put anything up there. And also, very much like Steve Orlando in that one series that I think it was Steve, where he had a story that took place 500 years before the Legion of Superheroes. And he kind of explained the intergalactic history between the current era and the 31st century. Yeah, it was
Awesome.
It was
I like that.
Electric Warrior was the name of the series.
Okay.
And it was really great to see where a lot of the intergalactic politics of the DC universe went in the ensuing years.
All right.
And I love that idea. And Brian played with it as well. And I know you're going to play with it in your run.
You say Orlando wrote that?
Yes. And it was I think it only made it through like eight issues or whatever.
He's going to be pissed at me that I don't know that book.
That's all right. Well,
but
again,
I haven't read it. I'll look it up. I'll ask him about it tonight, actually.
But that's, truly, man. Yeah, I hope you do, because it's a great book. And I love, first of all, in your House of L story, it was great to see Brainiac 4.
Yeah, thanks.
And that was fantastic. And it's like, yes, what about the Brainiacs between the original Queer Docs, or however you said, the Legion version, and then up to 5? I mean, what's the deal with 3 and 4?
Yeah, so, I know that Brainiac did not come from Krypton exactly. Like that whole thing has been changed over the years.
Right.
But there's still this relationship between the Coluans and Krypton that I wanted to kind of explore and get into, and just acknowledge their shared heritage, and I've read something with Brainiac 4 in it before.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a character that's been around a little bit.
Okay.
And someone name dropped him to me online about knew his actual real docs, whatever his name. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, of course they do. That's fantastic.
And like,
that's
the same guy as so-and-so. I'm like, yes, it is. I wouldn't have not be able to rattle it off like that. But yes.
Gotta love the fans. Absolutely, man. Oh yeah, no problem. Here he is.
But yeah, to get back to Nerdette's, somebody just say it again or something.
Did she have it earlier? It was Electric Warrior. Yeah, she's confirming that, or Denny's confirming that it was Electric Warrior.
But Nerdette was asking whether there's a future for that book. I hope so, man. There's been a lot of buzz about that book, and it's been really rewarding to see that. I want to use that family tree again. I want those characters to be real. I mean, there's all kinds of Easter eggs. Oh, nice comment there.
Yeah, Steve Commander is looking forward to your run. I'm getting a Jurgen Stern Kessel era vibe from the solicits. Yeah, man.
Thanks, dude. That's high praise. Jurgens is the man.
I love Dan. And there you go. 30 years of Superman writing. Clearly the guy gets
God.
30, longer than 30 years. I mean, he started writing Superman in the 80s. So, yeah, he knows what he's doing.
That would be a dream come true. But yeah, sorry, I keep getting sidetracked. But
no worries, man.
House of L. Yeah, that whole book is like a giant Easter egg. I mean, there's so much stuff in there about what's coming. About a lot of it ties into other Future State books that came out. We wanted them all to feel like they counted. Like you're not getting punished for not reading them all, but rewarded if you do read the other ones. And there's stuff coming out in my action run, and the action run at least for sure, that pays off stuff that you saw in House of L. There's a couple of the characters, a couple of the House of L that are descendant from a race that we introduce in action. So awesome. you get a kind of a tease about where those characters came from. There's all kinds of reference to War World, of course, in House of L. You're going to see all that pay off. Yeah, man. I'm like people keep saying like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing your run start, which is awesome. But it really did start with Future State. And there's all these clues in Worlds of War and House of L too for things that are coming.
Well, like RP Chatham asks, where was Darkseid when the Red King took his planet and armies? Is that coming up?
I can't tell you that.
Yeah, obviously. That's all right.
Because I would love to do more House of L, and if so, there's a good chance that Pyros is going to be in it, and we could see more of him. I will say, for people who loved House of L, first of all, thank you for reading it, and thanks for all the kind words.
Just out this week. Yep.
Just on shelves, and it was inspired by Arthurian legend, like heavily. If you couldn't tell that, it was meant to be. I mean, they were like, okay, you got to introduce all these descendants of Superman. You've got 44 pages or whatever it was. And like, okay, we're going to tell a big epic battle scene, and it's going to be told in the style of, the last half of Beowulf, or the Song of Roland, or the Battle of Camelot, where Camelot fell. It's going to be, we're going to get in late. We're going to get out early. We're going to see the final hours of this house that lived 1,000 years. And that's why we have the iambic pentameter poetry set up, like with the narration in there, to make it feel like an old epic poem. That's why we had the Circe thing that a few people got real pissed about, because there's that's Arthurian legend as well, where in those legends, in some versions of the legends, Morgan Le Fay kind of tricked Arthur into having a baby with her that grew into being his great enemy.
Mordred?
There's also versions in which Morgan Le Fay's mother did that with Uther, King Uther, Arthur's dad.
Right. Yeah, that was in the Excalibur film. That's so great. Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Am I right? Was Mordred Arthur's son?
It depends on the version that you read. There are versions in which Mordred is Arthur's nephew. There's other versions in which he's Morgan's son by another man, so some other random.
Oh, okay.
There's the relationship between Morgan Le Fay and Mordred is pretty solid, but his relationship to Arthur is different depending on which version you read.
I see.
But I like the version in which he is Arthur's bastard son. I think that's pretty rad.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do a version of that here. And there's also in the old versions, you also see Morgan tricking and trapping Merlin in another world. That's how Merlin never really leaves, never dies. He's like trapped by Morgan somewhere else.
Yep. And
that's how we take Superman off the board in this story too. So the whole thing is a big love letter to Arthurian legend, showing the end of this big epic house.
100%. And truly, again, you set up stuff in Worlds of War, your first chapter of Future State, and that was a great. Let's deal with the Mongol aspect of that story first. Always great to see Mongol. I think he's one of the greatest creations in later Superman history, to give him a villain that is worthy of being a Superman villain. And I always love when he shows up.
Yeah,
he's
me too.
A badass, and he is scary, and is like a dark side level villain that can really fuck Superman up. So I like that.
And I will say that I feel like if somebody were to ask me the difference between somebody like him, like people like Darkseid, Thanos, Mongol, people sometimes literally get them mistaken for each other because there are similarities,
Absolutely.
We're going to be showing, we're going to be making that distinction a little more clear going forward.
Okay.
As clear as I can make it. Because Mongol has, plus the cool thing is, or a cool thing is, this is not Mongol Classic. Mongol Classic is dead.
This is Mongol's son.
Exactly. And Mongol is now, that was one of the coolest things, like establishing Mongol as a title. Like the pharaohs,
Sure. Or Dooku Kim or not Dooku Kim, that's a boxer. The North Korean leaders. When they pass from father to son. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. This Mongol is a new one, and we don't know him. And I want to see, how this person is different, how this person is a threat. Because there was a version. There's an issue in Bendis's run where I want to say Superman was super pissed. It was like right when John came back, and he's feeling so cheated out of all those years with his son. And I think he just went off and found Mongol and just like beat him down because he needed it, This is a version of Mongol that we're going to see where that would not happen.
He should be better than he should learn the lessons of his father and what his father failed at.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great opportunity, and to hate Superman that much more because of the times that he messed up his father. I think that's great. I think that's excellent, man. And I loved in the art in Worlds of War how Conan-esque Superman was at times with that sword and in that armor and everything.
Oh, thanks, dude.
It looked great.
That image from, I think maybe the last time I talked to you, I had a copy of Superman Annual 10 on my desk that had that image of him with the sword on the front.
And the shield. I think that was a Gil Kane cover.
No, it wasn't. I looked. I couldn't find. I looked at the signature, and he told me the guy's full name. Sorry.
Maybe it was Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, or
no, it was nobody that prominent, but you knew the name.
I'm looking it up while we're talking.
I'm sure somebody else is on it right now.
That's probably true too.
But anyway, it was the story inside was illustrated by Kurt Swan, and I admit I did not love it, but as a kid, that image of Superman holding up the sword was so iconic, and it gave me this whole new just version of what Superman could be, and it was just this iconic image that never left me, and I really wanted to
pop up the image.
I wanted to show us a more epic kind of Spartacus version of Superman here. Spartacus, but more John Carter. The design of the character was so clearly inspired by John Carter. And that's all in McKell. McKell came up with that design, really. But
that's awesome.
As part of the descriptions with what was going on in the story.
Can you hear me okay, Phil?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Good. I can hear you fine. My computer's being slow, so if I pop out, just vamp until I'm able to sign back on.
Don't leave me here.
Yeah, no, stop. It'll be fine. And you can talk about all this stuff. Because I was trying to share the image of Superman 10 from eBay, and right now my computer's saying not responding. Are you able to hear me still?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. Here, I'll ask another question then. So we had Worlds of War, we had House of L, and like you said, there's a lot of Easter eggs coming for your run. So after Infinite, you've got a short story in Infinite Frontier. Tell us about what you can as far as that little interlude.
Well, it's very short. It's the Infinite Frontier Zero, Infinite Frontier number 0, is an anthology that shows most of the heavy hitters in the DC universe and how it's kind of a bridge from death metal and future state into current, continuity again. And we see, I don't know how much I'm supposed to spoil, but it's you see a glimpse of these different heroes and what they're going to be dealing with going forward. And mine is about John.
Okay.
Not to say that Superman's not in the book. He is, by Clark. I mean,
yes.
But we're going to see John, and it's a little taste of who John is as a character, and the version that who he is, having been raised by his parents, and who he is. There was another question in the chat earlier about what's the difference between your Jonathan and the one in the show.
Sure.
And thank you for your patience if you're still on the line here, but I'll say it's very different in that Jonathan and Jordan in the show kind of have very different elements of Jonathan in the comics. Like they kind of split him into two for the sake of the show.
Okay.
I've talked already about what I see as Clark's misstep in not telling his kids who they are, who he is. There's this part in the episode where they're like, "You've been lying to us our whole life. Like, how are we supposed to trust you or something?" Maybe that part was in my own brain.
No, he said that. No, that's exactly what Jordan said.
But honestly, it would be a valid thing to ask. Like, how are we supposed to trust anything you ever say? You've lied to me literally every day since I was old enough to understand you. And that's super valid. And in the comics, I was planning on having some, not drama, but the fact that that Jonathan has kind of come of age in the future, and not just in the future, but in a future in which his dad is like Jesus Christ with superpowers. He's like this revered figure, the greatest superhero of all time. Who would want to have to live up to that? And they see him as kind of that same thing. He's that guy's literal son in the future.
Yep.
Talking about pressure that nobody would want. That's insane. And and John didn't even know any of that crap until he was a little bit older. So he's got this insane pressure. So I was expecting to write a little like angst with John, like not resentment at all, but just a little bit of drama, I guess, between him and his dad. Like, just make the relationship a little bit harder on Jonathan's end than his dad just wants to be around him again. But then when I got down to actually writing the characters, it didn't feel right at all, because Jonathan trusts and loves his dad so much, and Clark is just, made of love for his son. I mean, he can't. I mean, I'm completely projecting that on him because I mean,
I'm with you though. I
have
think
a
you're
son
right.
that I am so close with. I just could not. It just didn't make any sense on the page. Like they're both just so inherently good, and they love each other so much, and both so understanding and compassionate. It didn't make any sense for there to be that weird family teenage drama crap. Like it just didn't work because that trust is so well established. And I know in the comics and the Tomasi, maybe even as far back as Jurgens, I guess. I mean, he was also technically lying to his son then, but in the comics now, you don't feel it. You don't feel any of that drama, tension at all. They just trust each other so much. And in the show, that's going to have to be established. They're not there yet at all.
Right. Absolutely.
Especially with Jordan.
Right. 100%. No, I agree. I'll tell you what, Phil, I'm going to let you find a question in the chat to address. And if you're able to scroll, are you able to scroll and see the question?
I should check and make sure.
Because all right, and while I'm explaining, I'll pop out just for a second and come back in. But I didn't, and you'll still be broadcasting, and you can address a fan question.
Okay,
and
sure.
I'll just come in mid answer. So
Sounds
you find a question, and I'll wink out.
All right,
whenever you're ready.
What do I see? Starting from the bottom, what's my perspective on Pyros L turning out to be such an evil man? So Pyros, apologies for spoilers for anyone who's not read House of L, but Pyros is somebody who. So Pyros is Mordred to Superman's Arthur, and Superman acknowledges that he is his son, but he was born of like magic and deception. It kind of the thing that Circe did is kind of puts this new spin on Superman's vulnerability to magic, and he acknowledges that he's his son and he wants to help him. But when we see Pyros for the first time, Pyros has been shaped by Circe to be this world-breaking thing that brings down the House of El forever. That's what he was born to do, literally. And he doesn't necessarily go along with that, but he for the most part, he's been fulfilling his destiny as that, and he sees himself as super, hey, John's back. He sees himself as Superman's true heir in part because he is his actual son and not his descendant. These other people are like many generations removed. Pyros is his actual son. So that's to him, that's a big difference. So, I mean, he's a product of his environment. It's like we all are. So yeah, I guess I have a lot of, kind of pity for Pyros as much as anything. He's not to say he's not a total asshole, but he's what he's been made, so, but his father is still Superman. So it's not to say he always has to be that way.
And that's why, honestly, I look forward to whatever you've got coming up, and hopefully you will down the road be able to address these in whether they're annuals or whatever. Some of these descendants, because I think there's a lot of great stuff that you can work in. Obviously,
yeah.
I'm going to put this up because I understand, and I know there's a very vocal Super Sons group out there. And Tell him 29 says, I do appreciate hearing from the Super Sons readers like myself, and would love to give us what we would like to see back due to circumstances unable to.
I think I got the gist of that.
Okay, good.
But I think this is addressing the thing that people often bring up about de-aging John.
Yes.
The answer that I think I've said this before, maybe even on this show, but the example of why I'm not going to just do the one more day thing and immediately bring back John and move everything back to where it was. There are actually a lot of reasons for that. And some of them some of them I can't reveal because there's big developments coming in the line that I don't want to spoil for anyone, but there are some serious reasons why we can't really go back in time with John. That aside, I wouldn't anyway for a lot of reasons. Part of it is that Brian Michael Bendis is, one of my heroes. His new Avengers run is the best event. That's the coolest Avengers ever was. He created Miles Morales. He is. It would be so incredible, and he's been great to me personally. And it would be so disrespectful to just undo what was done. Plus, it's disrespectful to the characters and to everyone who's been reading this whole time. Like continuity, like there are things that I did last year that I would love to take back, but that's
Interesting.
kind of not how it works. I mean, you can't just undo. It's just so disrespectful to the continuity of what has been going on.
Well, isn't there currently a Super Sons book that Pete's still doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And also, again,
I believe it's a digital book with George Corona, right?
right, exactly. And also, again, this is a multiverse. So there are opportunities to still tell Super Sons stories of both of them being 12-year-old kids or whatever. And forgive me, guys, I'm not for fans of Super Sons, because I was one too. One of my best friends who hadn't picked up a comic book in 20 years adored Super Sons. And it's like, it's the best thing I've read. He's like, this. He goes, how come there aren't more books like this? So I get it. I absolutely get it. But like Phil just said, you got to move forward. And now that we've got the multiverse, there's a great opportunity to tell a bunch of different stories, including more Super Sons stories. But to put them in the main book, I just don't think that's right. I think the story has to move forward. And that's why I'm in such agreement with a lot of the basic ideas of Future State. And especially after talking to people like yourself and people like James Tynan and some of these long-lasting characters where it's like, we know we're in the middle of a story. We will occasionally get end of stories. There have been great ones. There have been shitty ones over the years. Absolutely. But it is important to see some sort of growth and moving forward, because otherwise you wouldn't have these other ideas to explore with the character in television and film, but also just telling a story that we're not expecting and can be excited about a new facet to the character. So Superman finally raising a son, and especially now as a young man, I think is a great opportunity. And again, that's why I like it on the TV show as well. And I know John is in the comics is obviously how old is he in your mind, Philip? 20? 18?
I put him at around 18, but I don't know. But again, that's not necessarily canon. The question has not really come up in the run that we've been doing just lately. But he's in that neighborhood, and I will say, and again, I really am sorry to the fans who really they want it so bad. They really want Super Sons back, and I get it. But the thing is, the book's still on the shelf. The things that we loved about that family dynamic, I loved seeing Clark and Lois and the little kid John running around. Just that energy that John had of just being this rambunctious, fun-loving, compassionate kid was so great, man.
Yeah.
And seeing him interact with Damian was so great because Damian's so different. The thing is, Jonathan is not broken. He's still here, and he's still that same kid. So I will say, I will give out one spoiler and say I have already written a scene in which Jonathan and Damian are together. And it felt so great, and it's still the same dynamic that it used to be. And it's no different. And in fact, it's almost not better, but it's just as cool as it used to be, because Jonathan is bigger and more muscular, and Damian is smaller, but also like not smarter, but more like sly and suspicious. And he's like that dynamic of Damian being suspicious and aggressive, and John being kind and compassionate, and now even taller and more handsome, kind of brings that contrast out even more. And it's awesome. It was so fun to write that scene. And I mean, I hope to do more like that. I mean, I think you're still going to really dig it. Jonathan's not broken, and neither is Damian. They're still around.
The times they've been together since they've aged up Jonathan remind me of those great scenes in the Tom Hanks movie Big, when he's talking to his best friend. And his best friend is just like, you're still Josh Waiskin, man, or whatever his name was. He goes, I'm not impressed that you're 10 years older, that you're 20 years older than me, whatever it is. Right. And then even that great moment when he's like, I'm 6 months older than you, asshole. Yeah. But that's, there should be a little bit of that where David's like, it's still you, John. I know. Honestly, those to me are the best character moments, when hero to hero or hero to sidekick or person on the street, when they can cut through the bullshit and just be like, I know who you are. That great scene at the end of Kingdom Come when they're in planet Krypton. And, how's Luthor? Oh, I caught him trying to hack through the Batcave computer the other day. He sends his best. And Clark's like, really? And Batman's like, no. And it's just like, yeah, no, dumbass. It's like, again, these people know each other and should cut through cut to the chase of, hey, it's me, man. You're not fooling anybody. I don't care what you're throwing out there, and now you're big Jonathan Kent. You're
Right.
still that jerk that you and I went and almost got killed by Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
4 years ago or whatever it was.
I really love that dynamic, and I love it just as much now as I ever did. They're still around, and we could still very much see a Super Sons book. Again, we have one now where they're both still young again, but we can still see them again in the current, the way things are now. And even if none of that was on the table, even if we didn't have to, if I was the only writer at DC who had ever been at DC, and it was all up to me, and I didn't have to worry about professional courtesy or about continuity to the readers, and I was writing for myself, and it was all my decision. I still wouldn't make such a quick, jerky change like that to go literally back in time, for various reasons. For one thing, Jonathan has gone through all of this stuff. I don't want to undo that and make him go through it again. But mostly, I would point to the Star Wars trilogy. And this is what I was saying earlier. Like something I brought up to you before, I think, the most recent Star Wars trilogy, in which you started out with JJ, went to Rian Johnson, and back to JJ. We established a trilogy in which Rey is the chosen one. She's super special. There's a mystery who she is. We've got this Darth Vader wannabe with the mask. We've got this big mystery about who Snoke is. This is a big quest to find Luke. The Force is only for these chosen few. And then Rian Johnson comes in and it's like, pivot. Now, Luke's dead. Rey's a nobody. The mask's off. Snoke's dead. Huge, huge change. And the Force is for anyone with the broom kit at the end. Which was awesome, right. But it was a very big difference than Rey is our only hope. And then there was another big pivot, and then it went right back where it was. And now we've got this trilogy. Kind of doesn't make sense. It would be, comics are all about the illusion of change, where there's going to be this shift. Like things will change, will look like the continuity is changing, but actually find ways back to this main thread that you're following. And we can still get to a place where we get that awesome family dynamic again that we had with the Super Sons books and with the Tomasi stuff, but it needs to be in a way that moves forward and is additive rather than just undoing a big chunk of history. That is absolutely the wrong way to do it. And plus, we have all these opportunities to tell stories with John now as an older guy, with the stuff with Legion, but also what we're about to do in the main books. So please trust us. Believe me, we've thought about everything.
Listen, and I'm seeing a lot of comments about aging up John, and forgive me, Gar, but I'm going to point this out, was a knee-jerk decision. How can you say that when given all the things they've done with John, putting him in the Legion of Superheroes, setting him on this trajectory that Phil is going to explore in his run? I can't disagree more. And also there was a comment that now Damian has his own book. He'll be on his own journey. I agree with you, Nerdette. That's fine. Right. And also this, Bendis has no depth on characters, being honest here. No, sorry. I disagree. I think what Bendis does is he's very brief on dialogue, but what he puts in there, there's a lot of subtext. And obviously Phil and I are Brian fans, and we and we like what he does. But yeah, I'm sorry. It's okay not to like it, but I disagree with your characterization.
Yeah, Bendis has this amazing knack for, especially in team books, he can just have someone speak just a couple of words of dialogue and just completely pin who they are.
Absolutely.
One of the coolest aspects of Bendis's books is that you can take out all the art and just see the balloons on the page, and you can tell who's speaking almost always because he just nails those voices so well.
Now here's and again, you don't have to reveal it, but I'm going to throw it up there because it's an interesting question. On the topic of John, is he dead during House of L? Because his brother's Pyrocell is there, but John is nowhere to be found.
I don't want to reveal that just yet.
That's fine.
Let's see.
That's a good answer.
I will say there are other members of the House of L who are alive in the time of House of L that you do not see on the page. Brandon. I will say Brandon has a brother. And I really love Brandon Kent. I hated how it all went down, but he's just a beautiful character, and I really like that character a lot. There are other characters that you would recognize that are also alive during that time, but they are otherwise occupied. So
interesting. Okay,
not every L is on the page.
That's awesome, man. No, I think that's great. And yeah, I mean, like a quick example of Bendis with two characters, the stuff he did with Adam Strange and Superman. There's not a lot of dialogue there, but clearly there's a relationship. And again, I think through the subtext you understood. So that comment that he only likes to write surface dialogue, I'm like, yeah, then I guess you're not reading deep enough, and maybe you're being a little too quick with your reading, in my opinion. So again, I felt it's fair to acknowledge, because again, I think there are things about Bendis' Superman run that people didn't like. I like.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't reveal all the reasons why we won't de-age John right now.
Sure.
But I promise you, they're good reasons, and not just the ones that I've mentioned. There are other reasons that are super important. So please trust us. Believe us. We are, like, these stories are being written by some of the biggest fans around, myself included.
I agree with these two comments that Batman Universe was great that Bendis wrote, and Nick Darrington did the art on that, and Up in the Sky with Tom King and Kubert was incredible.
Yeah, totally. The other day, somebody asked me about what. In fact, this might have been a question today for me to answer on here. What do I think are some underrated Superman arcs?
Yeah,
and I wouldn't say Up in the Sky is underrated because it did get a lot of attention, but it's great, man. I Up in the Sky, All-Star Superman. I think Snyder's Superman Unchained book had a lot of really cool stuff in it. I love that main character that they brought out for it. Yeah, God, what's some other ones? Superman for All Seasons. I love Mark Waid's voice for Superman.
Sure, and both of those, yeah. Loban All Seasons was great. I'm a big fan of Rucka's run in the early 2000s when Clark got demoted to the crime beat and was working overnights and stuff and working out of the shack. And I thought that was a really interesting period. And again, it just didn't last long enough for my taste. But I really liked it.
Let's see. Any high concept ideas? Sorry.
I was just going to say, and again, now that and this is the other thing, you see, because I don't, it's not that I disagree or don't agree with everything that Brian did, but now it's like, when Clark tries to be a journalist, given that he's already revealed his identity, I see how Superman can investigate a problem. But I miss that, again, the anonymity of Clark being able to, as a common man, grapple with an investigative journalism problem. And again, I just like that balance of the man and the super. And that's just one aspect that I don't know how he handles his role. And I mean, and again, like, well, you're taking him off world.
Yes.
So I mean, but yeah, so that's why I don't know how Clark Kent reporter survives at all in this current environment.
I will say in a world in which Superman's powers never manifested, I think he would primarily be a writer. And that was something that I tried to communicate in Worlds of War, actually.
Yes. And let's talk about that when you're done, because I absolutely.
Yeah, let's talk about it right now, actually.
All right, great. Because, yeah, man, if people haven't read it, Worlds of War is really its own story, but it plants the seeds for House of L. And, God, I'm so glad you brought this up, Phil, or I would have forgotten to talk about it. While the action is going on in Worlds of War, there's this incredible article that Clark Kent writes that very much I hear Clark's voice. I appreciated the subject. So tell us about this.
Yeah, so Worlds of War issues 1 and 2 were meant to be a kind of homage to Superman 400, that anthology that we spoke about before. There's this anthology from the 40s, excuse me, the 80s. And the theme was Superman in the future. There was art in there by the greatest legends who were alive at that time. Some of that was just pinups, but some of it was like Frank Miller did an actual story in there. It's an amazing book. And this is kind of my love letter to that, because I mean, it's literally future state. And this is about Superman in the future. And I wanted to do kind of a version of that. The first issue was meant to be our perspective on Superman, like what he means to us as humanity. And the second issue is meant to be what we mean to him, the way that humanity inspired him, the way we were always inspired by him, So in the first issue, we see these people that he has saved over the years talk about their thoughts about where he is, where he could be, kind of these fables about where, what happened, why he left us, and where he is now. And somebody in the chat actually asked about any high concept things I would like to get into with Superman. And some of those, I'd love to explore those more in depth. All of them were just kind of ways to kind of kick the tires and ask questions about Superman, and ways in which sometimes we have to kind of suspend belief when we read about Superman. And like, he's been around since 38, but he's still 35 years old. And he came from another galaxy, but he looks exactly like us, like down to the hair follicles and fingerprints. He's just like us.
Sure.
There's all these things that kind of don't make sense, but it doesn't matter because we have faith in him and we believe in him. So this is kind of about people's faith in Superman. But in the next issue, we see where he actually is, and he's being literally drugged through the mud, powerless, fighting on behalf of the people that need him, And then we read an article, an op-ed that he wrote as Clark Kent while he was at the Daily Planet, and how his journey kind of parallels in a way one of Clark Kent's heroes, who was this homeless man who had recently died. And the character of Edgar Waters, the homeless guy that I talk about in that article, was based on several people, real people. One of them was a homeless woman that I knew, actually, this homeless female veteran that I knew at the end of her life, who was nicknamed Sarge, who was living at a shelter at the time. And, she has lived a remarkable life. But probably the primary inspiration for Edgar Waters was Medgar Evers.
Sure.
Who was a great civil rights icon and a hero of mine personally, who had also volunteered to fight in World War II when he was like 17.
Ironically, Cleveland, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like Superman, yeah.
Cleveland, you know what? I'm not sure. Cleveland or Chicago. But
I think it's Cleveland then, because if he was Chicago, I certainly would have.
I'm sure you'd know.
So, well, no. I just think in terms of local education, we know all about Dr. King because Dr. King spent so much time here. But I'll look it up while we're talking. But I believe he's Cleveland, Medgar Evers. Yeah,
Medgar Evers is to me like one of the true Supermen in American history.
Absolutely,
volunteered to fight, and served in a segregated unit. And then came home and became one of the great leaders of the civil rights movement, and was eventually murdered. So that character was inspired very much by him, as the name suggests. Edgar Watt. I mean, I practically named him. I want to see Clark Kent as a writer, as well as I want to kind of show a picture of him more or less without his powers, and explore him as a writer as much as a warrior.
Decatur, Mississippi, by the way, is where Medgar Evers originally was from.
Okay.
And absolutely, so there we go. Shame on me. But yeah, no, it's a great article. And again, it really gets to the heart of Clark as a writer. And it's a great story. And I think you really pulled some amazing facts clearly from real history. And I assumed as much. And also weaved it into the DC universe and had your character, really, Edgar, doing his stuff in Metropolis and everything, and all the various places he was. It's fantastic, man. Absolutely. I really thought that was cool. And again, it was a great contrast to what was happening just a different place to be while we're watching this action of Superman, fighting a Mongol and on War World and everything. And, it was great. It was terrific. Thank
you very much. I appreciate that. It was an honor to work with Mikkel and Jordy on that book. They were just elevated it at every turn. I mean, the art has turned out so beautiful and just inspired me to do everything I could to give it my best work. And I'm so proud of those books.
That's awesome, man. Let's see here. What do you think of the linear verse? Asked Nerdev.
I think it's cool. I think
I assume it's this current Infinite Frontier Omniverse is how Snyder, I think, described it. I don't know if there's a difference.
Forgive my. Okay, so I'm not dealing with it in my run. So if I have misunderstood what the linear verse is, I'm sure someone in the chat will correct me. But as I understand it, it's kind of the premise that 5G was once going to be, in which there's a very specific timeline, like a moment in which Wonder Woman appears a moment in which she ascends, a time in which Batman is young, and a time when he is gone, and just less fluid than it is usually. I could be totally wrong about that. That's how I understand it. I've been kind of underwater with work, but that's how hopefully that's how it is. And I love that concept. I love that it's not the only version of events. Like, it would be pretty limiting if the only time we ever saw a young, capable Batman, it was the 80s. We never get to see him in current day, or I don't know. That would be just kind of, it would kind of fetter everybody. It was certainly a ballsy approach, but I love that we are getting to actually see it within the context of a omniverse where there's all these other versions too.
Understood. I'm addressing something that has been said on the chat, and I don't want to bring it up because some people don't understand how the real world works. And sorry, Gar, no offense, but it's kind of a moot point as far as I'm concerned. What else can we say about what's coming up? I mean, obviously these covers have kind of told their own story.
Yeah, the covers have been incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, really, what you got coming up? I used the more aspirational cover of John looking at Clark's uniform and the spirit of Clark obviously observing. I love that, but I know I saw another cover. Maybe it was the Superman cover where John is holding Superman and he's impaled on what looks like kryptonite or of some sort.
Oh yeah. So I will say that as far as what's coming, you're going to see a lot of, unlike the let's see, what should I say? Unlike the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo Batman run, where like Greg Capullo's art is what Scott's Batman looks like to me. I mean, I know he's worked with other artists, of course. I mean,
That's
Jock,
cool.
the Jock stories are also super iconic. He does something with Becky Cloonan, I believe, and they all look so great. But Greg Capullo is kind of the iconic Scott Batman. That is not the case with my run, at least not in what's coming up immediately. You're going to see a 2-issue story with Phil Hester in March. And that's the only like crossover event between Superman and Action that you're going to see.
Okay.
March 9th, I think, is the first issue. That's Superman 29 with Phil Hester. Just magnificent artist. He has such a singular style. He worked on the animated series back in the day a little bit, and just has this really beautiful streamlined approach. But it is very unlike the other artists that I have following him. So that 2-issue story is Superman 29 and Action 1029 2 weeks later. And then that arc is complete. It's those 2 issues. It's a very, very contained story about the same length as House of L. And then you're going to see Scott Godlewski, who drew House of L. He's doing an arc of Superman with me. And that he has such a distinct style. And then Daniel Sampere is doing Action. That's this event called War World Rising. And every version of that was written for that artist specifically. So you're going to get a slightly different tone of story depending on who the artist is, because I really feel strongly that, every story like that in comics should be a collaboration. And I'm trying to write to my artist's strengths, and hopefully that's what I've done. So you'll see, if you don't care for the Phil Hester story, it doesn't necessarily reflect on the other ones, or vice versa. Like the Hester story, to me, just really shows why Hester is such a special artist. And what I gave to Daniel in Action was just a very different kind of thing.
And then is Jamal following on the regular Superman book?
No, Jamal. My only work with Jamal to date is the short story in Infinite Frontier Zero.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But that turned out beautifully too. And I mean, he did incredible work. Jamal's as good as he ever was.
Sure. No, and he's got his history with Supergirl for years. He and Sterling Gates. And also Phil, back in the day, I think it was called Adventures of Superman, not to be confused with the digital version of that. But I know he and Clay Moore did a story together, a Toyman story. So yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I'm always happy to see Phil doing Superman or Batman or any of the big three.
Yeah.
Anytime he wrote Wonder Woman, he took over the Straczynski run of Wonder Woman when Straczynski stopped, and Robertson took over the rest of the Superman run.
If I could if I could talk craft for just a moment.
Please.
Tom King has this really cool thing that he does in a lot of his issues, in which he kind of has some kind of a framing device that is almost limiting in some way, like a visual panel layout, or some kind of a narrative thing, like there's a narrator or something that ties the issue together, or kind of puts it in the creative box, and it makes it kind of makes the writer. I mean, I can't, Tom has not given me his philosophy and why he does this, but then as a writer myself, I've done that in a way, as a way to kind of, get more creative. Like you kind of find a way to get creative within the confines of the framework that you've given yourself. And again, I don't know if that's on purpose, but that's something about his writing I like a lot. And I've done that. I did that for the Phil Hester story. I really love the way Phil's layouts work. And I wanted to see, and plus he did this kind of a Jack Kirby inspired pinup that I think he did it for an auction, like for a charity auction online.
Sure.
It's so kick-ass, and I wanted to see more of it, honestly. So I did kind of a Jack Kirby-esque space story that basically gave me no choice but to either use no text or to use narration only. So there's this huge section in which there's basically no dialogue, and I was able to narrate it, but not in an old school way where I'm basically describing what you're looking at. Instead, it was a narrative subtext.
Understood. Sure.
Something that kind of illustrates what the characters are going through without actually saying it, So that was what I did for the Phil Hester story. I did not do that for the other two artists, because the approach to their work is just so different. But I'm super proud of how the Phil Hester story came out. It's a very stylized approach, kind of like sort of the way that World War was stylized as far as the narrative boxes.
Well, mentioning Phil, I'm going to do a drink and draw. We did a drink and draw in late December, right before New Year's Eve, and unfortunately I missed it because I was in the hospital. But doing fine, everybody. Don't worry. Phil even asked before we started recording. Doing okay.
Phil's so cool.
So much so
that I'm the coolest guy.
I am able to host this one coming up. It's going to be a week from Friday, the 6th or the 7th. I forget what day that is, and or the 5th, something like that. And Phil is going to be part of the group of artists. Looking forward to talking to him about these first issues, because it will come out after our drink and draw. Will be that same week. Do they both come out that same week, or does one follow the other?
One comes out the 9th, the next one comes out the 23rd of March.
Okay, so all right, there you go. All right, well, maybe it'll be before then. I don't know, but regardless, I planned on talking to Phil about your guys' 2 issues, so I'm looking forward to doing it.
We actually found out recently that we are extremely distantly related.
Oh, no kidding! That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
That's great.
I forget if it's his great aunt or if it's his wife's great aunt. I think it's his, but he lives in this little town in Iowa that I visited as a kid to see my grandparents, and he lives there still. And there's an old photo of my grandparents' wedding in which his great aunt is in the photo. So yeah, we deduced at some point that we were related. Like there's a family name that we share.
Here, Gar has a good question here, and I'm glad that everyone in the chat was able to settle that discussion. But Gar asked, do you have regular talks with your artists, or do you mainly communicate through scripts?
We talk, and honestly, we should talk more. I talk with Daniel a lot.
Good.
Daniel, I talk just about every day or two. Not usually over the phone. Usually it's like, direct message or something.
Okay.
But yeah, very like he and I are collaborating very, very closely on the action. Scott and I will also talk a good bit about the Superman run. Phil and I spoke a little bit. We should have spoken more. Probably. I really try to, be a true collaborator throughout, but there's always kind of this understanding that I do write into the script that I got to read one of Bendis' scripts one time where he said he was telling the artist a story so that he can tell a story. And I really, really like that. So that's how I approach it. I'm telling the artist a story that they can tell a story. So there's an understanding that even though I do write pretty detailed outlines, and not outlines, but like breakdowns where I have, a panel description in every panel.
Sure.
I give the number of panels per page and all that. That is all with the understanding that they're allowed to mess with whatever they want.
There you go. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd like to talk to them about it so that we can kind of work out, because if there's a specific problem they have to deal with, if the problem is like, yeah, there's too many panels in this page, before they just go ahead and make a change, sometimes like, well, let me change the scene to make it work better for you. Or if there's an angle that, if I've described a panel that is going to be inherently very tall and narrow, and then it makes it hard for the next panel, which was inherently wide, that gives me a chance to kind of correct my mistakes if it's something stupid that I did.
That's interesting that you think that detailed regarding panels, and that's something that I don't think I've ever talked about before with writers and how they design a page for an artist. That, okay, we're going to have a narrow and then go to wide or whatever. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's something you should think about. If there's in some cases very often the artist can kind of figure out a clever way around it without even talking. But I almost never push back on a layout. Whenever something comes back different than I imagined, if they took out a panel or sometimes added a panel, they're almost, of course, they're doing it to play to their strengths, and that's what we all want.
Certainly.
But sometimes if it's something that I did foolish that I can correct, I really want to be a part of that conversation. So yeah.
This is interesting. Shisui asks, does John Kent still have the potential to be stronger than Clark, as Batman said? Is that something addressed in your run? Before you answer, that's very interesting, because that's very opposite of, and by the way, the original Super Sons from the 70s, again, being 12 or so when that stuff was coming out, I loved the hell out of it. And I loved the fact that Superman's son in those issues only had half the powers because his mom was human. We never saw who his mother was. She was always in silhouette. So it could have been Lana. It could have been Lois. But yeah, I always, and in fact, there's a scene where machine gun bullets are bouncing off of young Superman. And young Batman is like, oh, that's got to be easy for you. Those got to feel like butterflies. He's like, yeah, more like bee stings. I'm only half as powerful as my father. So yeah, I don't know. Do you address that, or have you thought about where John's power potential might be?
We do. I can't remember if that was the Tomasi run, but at some point Batman kind of laid it out for Superman. Like, look, your kid could potentially be stronger than you. I think it was in Tomasi run because he was still a little kid at the time. And I'm not sure if that's been addressed again since then, but I like that. So yeah, I mean, John still has the potential to be stronger than his dad. And in my run, very, very soon, we're going to see ways in which that is true. It's not just going to be some pie in the sky thing that maybe someday he'll be more powerful. We're going to see, we're going to see him do something that his dad just definitively cannot do.
Interesting. All right. Don't worry about it, buddy. I've been yawning and burping, and that's why I do that stuff. So don't sweat it. Phil, I've kept you up. I love the conversation. I think we're good. I don't, again, I want to save more for when we got more grist in the mill to talk about. And certainly whenever we do talk next, I'm sure we'll talk more as well about Superman and Lois.
I'd love to. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'd love to talk more about the show anytime you want to. I'd love to talk about what's coming out in the Superman books. Aliens coming out too next month.
I was going to say, I know your Marvel stuff is going to start happening as well. So that's great. And certainly, we'll make room for an Aliens conversation.
I love that.
Now, hey man, like you're in the club, Phil, like it or not. And I know, and I appreciate that you do like it. And seriously, it meant a lot that you reached out and you're like, hey, are you okay? When I was down at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, of course.
So thank you, buddy. Seriously.
Yeah, your friend. I'm glad you're doing better.
I feel the same way, man. Absolutely. And truly, we really didn't talk much other than acknowledging your Clark Kent article. And of course, the military background of the character that you created for that story. But I don't know. I imagine during COVID still, you guys have a lot of downtime right now as far as being in the band. But if there's any good Army stories, we got to get into those as well.
Yeah, of course. I know there was some concern from some fans that, because a lot of fans, probably the biggest exposure that I had before the Superman book was a Captain America miniseries that I wrote.
Yes.
And some people were kind of dubious about, like, oh, he's in the military. This is all going to be a big propaganda book. And Superman, yeah,
okay.
And Superman also is kind of, there's the American way,
sure,
mission statement, And I totally understand you're not going to please everyone. Like I caught shit for for writing Truth, Justice, and the American Way in Worlds of War. And I caught shit from others for not including the American Way part in House of L, 1,000 years in the future.
Isn't that interesting? I agree. And it's very interesting how that's become a football in the last 20 years or so. I agree.
It's totally fine. And I get it. I understand that we're living in polarizing times and everyone's got a version of their Superman in their head. I mean, honestly, I'm the same way. I have a version of Superman that lives in my mind, and I know that that is the one that is true, you know? And I get that other people have that too, and they want to see him different sometimes. But Captain America and Superman are very different characters.
Agreed.
And it's not, the story. And I did tell the story honoring Medgar Evers, because Medgar Evers is a character that I believe is a person that I think Clark Kent would have personally been extremely inspired by. And it was a way to kind of illustrate who Clark Kent was, as well as Superman, to show who Superman really is. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to be beating the army drum all the time. I mean,
I'm up.
But if you want to just talk about army stories, I would, I would love to.
Would you ever want to do any of the military characters from DC?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anytime they want to, right now it's all about time management. I'm doing another thing at DC right now that I can't talk about yet. That I'm super excited to reveal. That's also not like I'm not doing any militaristic books right now at all, unless you count Alien, which has
right.
There's still kind of that legacy of that second movie that's all about the Space Marine, and there's still elements of that in this.
Cool,
but it's not like an army book.
No, I understand, but no, I mean, it really, especially, I mean, you got Sergeant Fury and you got a few other characters over at Marvel, but really, when you think war books, DC has this incredible history, and truly in the right hands, I think there have been some amazing stories over the years. In fact, Azzarello and I were just talking about that great story he did with Kubert, thank God, before, Kubert passed away. And I think it's a great Sergeant Rock story. And seriously, every time Joe would write anything new military-wise, and certainly drawing it, I was blown away. But even Kanigher, who gets his lumps from certain, stories that he told, both military and non-military, his Wonder Woman run is really sad. But that said, I did like those war books of the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, in fact, as well. And Kirby with the Losers. I mean, there's just a lot of great. There's a lot of great stuff, man. There really is. I mean, I really think there were a lot of really interesting characters. And I didn't know if that ever crossed your mind of ever wanting to dip into the military side of the DC universe.
Honestly, I'd love to. I think Sergeant Rock is a super awesome character, and Joe Kubert is another one of my heroes.
Sure.
Who himself was also a military guy.
Absolutely. And then took over I know we talked about this before. He took over PS Magazine from Will Eisner and everything. So yeah. Yeah, Kubert's such an inspiration. And it is a tricky time right now, and I get it. I get there's gonna be certain readers who look at all my work, just scouring it for any kind of a hidden message. Interesting. Yeah, I guess. And that's ridiculous, but sure. Okay. Well, no, I mean I get the sensitivity to it, but I would just encourage people to that are worried about that to understand there's a difference between being a patriot who is proud to serve their country and being a nationalist. That is not the same thing. I couldn't have said it better. That's fantastic, Philip. Absolutely. Man. So I make no apologies for taking an oath to the Constitution, but I'm also not that guy that goes rah no matter what we do. I write stories that try to, I've written a lot of stories before this stuff about kind of kicking the tires on the great American experiment, trying to show how we can be more than we are, how we, the Truth, Justice, American Way thing for me is about an aspiration to be, it's honoring a version of America that actually has not been realized yet. Like it's trying to, an acknowledgement that we are trying to be more than we are in the way that that we get from a Superman story. It's not like, America, no matter what, we're always right. We're, American exceptionalism. That's not what True Justice, the American Way means. No. So I would just encourage people to understand that, like being proud of the ideals that we're founded upon and being a nationalist are not the same thing. So I knew I liked you for a reason, Phil. There you go. Absolutely. No, absolutely, man. And you're right about that. I think nationalism and patriotism has been unfairly confused in the last few years. And it's so easy to see why too. I mean, absolutely. The word patriot
has kind of been hijacked.
Agree. And America First, and even America First, it's like we're part of the world, man. I mean, and we're the, again, I mean, and Superman and Captain America in very different ways represent that ideal that, I'm sorry, I disagree with those who find more comfort in nationalism than the American way. So no, I'm with you. And interesting. What are you going to do? I like it. I like that.
But all that said, I would love to do a book about, our fictional heroes like Captain America or Sergeant Rock or the old like Howling Commando stuff.
Sure.
I mean, when I got the call to do Captain America, it was this great opportunity. They were like, we want to show they gave me a very specific thing that they wanted to see. Like it was a tie-in with Empire, and they wanted to see Cap rallying Earth's military forces against an alien threat. That was like, you got 3 issues. Here's what you got to do with it.
Yep.
And so, that's what we did. It was all about military. And they also were like, oh, by the way, SHIELD doesn't exist anymore. So it ended up being this thing about, gave me an opportunity to have Cap hang out with real life soldiers, just American soldiers, which was really cool. I get that people, took a weird message from that, but it was an opportunity to kind of make my own version of the Howling Commandos present day, which was kind of a neat opportunity.
Sure.
But it's not something I set out to do in every book.
No, I understand. And again, it's part of Captain America's history. And this is what makes him a great team leader is his military experience. And sometimes it's just a matter of strategy and stuff. But I think it's an important facet of I mean, at least that's one of the things about his military history that I certainly take from it, that he's a natural commander. He's a natural born leader.
Yeah, exactly. He's a soldier first, like that's his origin story. That's his identity as a soldier first.
And even that one image, it's so funny. I for a while, and I should get back to it because it's a great stress reliever. I can't draw worth a lick, but I did with my friends that are artists and going to various drink and draws when we could all hang out. I really picked up coloring books, and I really enjoyed it. And there's that great image in Age of Ultron, when Ultron is totally like crushed there. It's in the middle of the story, and Chicago's completely obliterated. And there's a scene of the Avengers all hunkered down, and they go to Cap, and Cap is literally like in a fetal position, but it's kind of a classic soldier kind of, I imagine it as something maybe during a winter war moment where a soldier just to keep warm is literally all just like in a tight ball, but he's defeated. And to me was this sad moment of being a soldier where I don't know what to do right now. I'm just going to kind of meditate or whatever, and just to get out of whatever, I don't know. It could have been, you could read it a bunch of different ways, but it really is this weak moment, Captain America, that I took to be kind of a soldier's frustration. Yeah. And I thought it was just so powerful, and I colored it, and really, it's ridiculous. What am I, 5 years old? I was very proud with how well it came out.
That's not ridiculous at all, man. That's awesome. I'm glad you got some, took some,
My paint by numbers turned out really good. It does look like the Blue Boy. Look at that.
None of that. It's good, man. I'm glad you did that. That's awesome.
So I have my coloring books, and yeah, it's funny. Franco is doing his own, and I'm happy to promote this, by the way, everybody. If you follow Franco of Art and Franco and Tiny Titans and other great DC projects, Archimaniacs and other great books, he is going to be reviewing Superman and Lois with Art Baltazar, and they're doing it on Friday nights on Franco's Facebook channel. So
nice.
Tune in for that, and you'll get more. But he's asked me to come on and guest, and I'm like,
oh, dude, you totally should. You'd
crush it. My guests draw, and I'm like, well, I can't draw. I'm like, I can color. He's like, oh, coloring's great. And I'm like, all right, I got coloring books. I'm fine. So look for that.
I will. We got to come on. We got to talk more about the show once it's been on a little bit.
Oh, 100%, man. No, and truly, yeah. And also when Alien gets up and running, no, Phillip, you're always welcome back.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. I'd love to come back.
You know that. And seriously, I think you're in a really interesting place at both companies. And I'm excited for what you've got coming up. And all people have to do is truly read these future state books and really appreciate the future landscape that Phillip has laid out for the Man of Steel. But, the character's still there. And I think people are going to be pretty excited about once your stories in Superman in Action get going, starting with this Phil Hester story next month. So,
thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to talking more about it. And thanks to all the people on here asking questions and contributing. I really appreciate all the all the contributions.
Absolutely, man. No, great comics, everybody. And I'm sorry that I couldn't get to everybody, but I thank you very much for your comments. I think they're all very good. And Phillip will come back. So if anything wasn't addressed, we could certainly talk about it next time. I hope you'll join us. And thanks for watching Word Balloon Live. Tomorrow night, as I said, Brian Azzarello and I are doing a Q&A for a public library in the Cleveland area. And it won't be on the Word Balloon channel, but I will point on social media where to find it. It's for kids. So I would ask you to be, thinking about a PG conversation. I'm waiting for more details from Brian. When I get them, if I can't present it live, I'll certainly record it and it'll be on Word Balloon's video channel and audio channel. But that's what I'm doing tomorrow. And got great stuff lined up for next week and all through March. March is going to be another great month and have very cool people like Phillip. So look forward to that. So thanks a lot for watching tonight. I'm going to wrap things up. To the Outer Limits coming up in about 90 minutes. Come back to the Word Balloon channel, and it gives you plenty of time to watch the episode 28 of the first season. The name escapes me right now, but that's the next episode we're talking about tonight. It features Marion Ross from Happy Days, Mrs. C, and Edward Platt, the Chief of Control. It's a very crazy episode, and I can't wait to talk about it. So we'll be back in 90